The morning sun cast long shadows across the polished marble floors of Kensington Palace as stood before her bedroom mirror, her reflection catching the soft light that filtered through the tall windows. Her fingers trembled slightly as she reached for the delicate pearl earrings that had belonged to Diana, Princess of Wales. Tonight was more than just another royal engagement. It was the royal variety performance, an evening that would mark a significant milestone in her journey as the Princess of Wales. William emerged from the adjoining dressing room, adjusting his white bow tie with practiced ease. Even after all these years of royal duties, he still felt the familiar flutter of nerves before major public appearances. But tonight felt different somehow, more meaningful. Perhaps it was the way he had been preparing for weeks, studying the performers, learning about the charity beneficiaries, or maybe it was simply the weight of continuing a tradition that his grandmother, Queen Elizabeth II, had cherished for decades. "You look absolutely radiant," William said softly, approaching his wife and gently placing his hands on her shoulders. In the mirror, their reflection showed a couple who had grown together through the pressures of royal life, each challenge making them stronger as partners and as individuals. Smiled, but William could see the hint of anxiety in her eyes. The royal variety performance was always a high-profile event, but this year carried extra significance. It would be their first time attending as the Prince and Princess of Wales, titles that still felt both natural and overwhelming. The weight of following in the footsteps of previous title holders was never lost on either of them. Downstairs in the palace, their children were finishing breakfast with their nanny. Prince George, now old enough to understand the importance of his parents' work, had wished them good luck the night before. Princess Charlotte had drawn them a picture of a stage with two figures she labeled Mummy and Daddy, while Prince Louis had simply hugged them tightly, not quite grasping why his parents seemed more serious than usual. The significance of family was never far from his mind. Growing up in Berkshire, she had watched royal events on television with her parents and siblings, never imagining that one day she would be the one stepping out of the royal car, walking down red carpets, and representing the monarchy. The transformation from the girl who met Prince William at university to the Princess of Wales had been gradual but profound. As they made their final preparations, thought about the performers they would see tonight, she had spent hours reading about each act, understanding their backgrounds, their struggles, and their triumphs. There was Emma, the young singer from Manchester who had overcome poverty and family tragedy to earn her place on one of Britain's biggest stages. Her story reminded of the countless young people she had met through her charity work, each one fighting against circumstances that seemed insurmountable. Then there was the dance troupe from East London, a group of teenagers who had found purpose and direction through movement and music. Their choreographer, Mrs. Sarah Wilson, had written to personally, explaining how the arts had saved these children from paths that might have led to violence or despair. Reading that letter, had felt the familiar tug in her heart that came whenever she encountered stories of resilience and hope. William was thinking about different aspects of the evening. As future king, he understood that events like the Royal Variety performance served multiple purposes. They entertained, yes, but they also raised crucial funds for the Royal Variety charity, which supported entertainment professionals in times of hardship. They provided a platform for emerging talent and celebrated the rich cultural heritage of the United Kingdom. But beyond the official functions, William saw tonight as an opportunity to connect with people from all walks of life. The variety in Royal Variety performance wasn't just about the different acts. It was about bringing together aristocrats and working-class families, celebrities and ordinary citizens, all united in their appreciation for talent and entertainment. The couple's private secretary appeared in the doorway, tablet in hand, ready to brief them on the final arrangements. The schedule was precise. Arrival at 7:30 p.m., meet and greet with key figures at 7:45 p.m., movement to the royal box at 8:15 p.m., interval reception at 9:00 p.m., and departure at 10:45 p.m. Each moment was carefully choreographed, but William had learned to find genuine connections within the formal structure. "Your Royal Highnesses," the secretary began, "the weather is clear, traffic routes are confirmed, and security is in place. The management has confirmed that all accessibility requirements have been met, and the charity representatives are eager to meet you during the interval." Nodded, mentally reviewing the names and faces she had studied. Meeting people was one of the aspects of royal duty she had grown to love most. Each person had a story, a reason for being there, and she had developed an ability to make genuine connections even in brief encounters. As they prepared to leave the palace, his mind wandered to the performers who were likely going through their own pre-show rituals at the... She imagined the nervous energy backstage, the last-minute costume adjustments, the vocal warm-ups, and the quiet moments of prayer or meditation that performers often needed before facing an audience. She thought particularly about James, the comedian who had written to her about his struggles with depression and how comedy had literally saved his life. His letter had been raw and honest, describing nights when the stage lights were the only thing that gave him hope. Tonight, he would perform for royalty, but understood that for him, it was about much more than royal approval. It was about proving to himself that he had truly overcome his darkest moments. The car journey to the London Palladium would take approximately 30 minutes, time that and William often used to center themselves before public appearances. They had developed a ritual of discussing not just the logistics of the evening, but also their hopes for what the event might accomplish. Tonight, they talked about the young performers and how the exposure might change their lives. "Do you remember your first big performance?" William asked, knowing that, while not a professional entertainer, had participated in several significant productions during her school years. Smiled, recalling the school play where she had forgotten her lines completely, but somehow managed to improvise her way through the scene. "I was terrified," she admitted, "but there's something magical about being on stage, knowing that people are watching and hopping for something wonderful." That magic was what drew both of them to events like the Royal Variety Performance. Unlike formal state functions or political engagements, this evening was purely about celebrating human creativity and talent. It reminded them why arts education and cultural support were such important causes in their charitable work. As their car approached central London, they could see the crowds beginning to gather around the... Photographers were already in position, fans held signs and flowers, and the atmosphere of anticipation was palpable even from inside their vehicle. Felt the familiar mixture of excitement and responsibility that came with public appearances. The itself held special significance for the royal family. The London Palladium had hosted the Royal Variety Performance numerous times over the decades, and its walls seemed to echo with the laughter and applause of generations past. Tonight would add another layer to that rich history. In her handbag, carried a small notebook where she had written down key details about each performer. It wasn't enough to simply attend and applaud. She wanted to engage meaningfully with the artists, to understand their craft and their journeys. This attention to detail was something she had learned from studying Queen Elizabeth II, who had been known for her remarkable ability to connect with people through genuine interest and well-informed questions. William was thinking about the broader impact of their presence. In an era where the monarchy faced constant scrutiny and questions about relevance, events like tonight demonstrated the institution's role in supporting and celebrating British culture. Their attendance wasn't just ceremonial, it was an endorsement of the arts and a statement about values. The security briefing had mentioned that several members of the public had waited since early morning for a glimpse of the royal couple. Always found this touching and slightly overwhelming. That people would spend their day waiting just to see them for a few moments spoke to something deeper than celebrity fascination. It represented a connection to tradition, to continuity, and to shared national identity. As they neared both and William took deep breaths and shifted into their public personas. The private conversation would pause, replaced by smiles, waves, and the careful attention to protocol that royal appearances demanded. But underneath the formal exterior, they carried with them the genuine excitement and respect for the performers they were about to see. The car slowed as they approached the red carpet that had been laid out for their arrival. Could see the flash of cameras beginning to fire, the crowd pressing against barriers, and the staff standing at attention. In a few moments, they would step out into the bright lights and begin another chapter in their ongoing story as working members of the royal family. But for now, in these last quiet seconds before the performance began, allowed herself a moment of gratitude. For the opportunity to support talented performers, for the platform to highlight important charitable work, and for the privilege of carrying forward traditions that connected them to generations of royal history while also making those traditions relevant for modern Britain. The car door would open soon, and the evening would officially begin. But the real performance, the careful balance of duty and genuine enthusiasm, of formal protocol and authentic human connection, was about to unfold in ways that would surprise both the performers and the royal couple themselves. The red carpet stretched before them like a river of crimson velvet, illuminated by the brilliant white flash of cameras and the warm golden glow of marquee lights. Stepped out of the royal car, her emerald green gown catching the light in a way that made her appear almost luminescent against the London evening. William followed, his formal evening wear impeccable, but it was the way he immediately reached for his hand that caught the attention of those closest to the barriers. The crowd's reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Cheers erupted from behind the security barriers, a wall of sound that seemed to bounce off the surrounding buildings. Signs waved frantically, flowers were thrust forward by eager hands, and mobile phone cameras captured every angle of the royal couple's arrival. But what struck most profoundly was not the noise or the spectacle. It was the faces in the crowd, each one representing someone who had chosen to spend their evening here, hopping for this moment of connection. Among those faces was an elderly woman who had attended every royal variety performance for the past 20 years. She held a small bouquet of roses from her own garden and a photograph of herself meeting Princess Diana in 1987. Had been battling cancer for 6 months, and tonight represented something precious to her, a continuation of a tradition that had brought light to some of her darkest moments. Noticed immediately, perhaps because of the way the older woman stood with quiet dignity while others pushed and shouted around her. Making her way over, accepted the roses with genuine warmth and spent several minutes in conversation. Told her about Diana's kindness all those years ago, about how that brief meeting had sustained her through difficult times, and about her hope that tonight's performance would be particularly special. "Your Royal Highness," said, her voice trembling slightly, "my granddaughter Emma is performing tonight. She's the singer from Manchester. When she told me she'd been selected, I knew I had to be here." His heart skipped a beat. This was Emma's grandmother, the young performer she had read so much about. Suddenly, the evening took on an even deeper dimension. "Emma is incredibly talented," replied. "We're so looking forward to her performance. You must be extraordinarily proud." The emotion in his eyes was unmistakable. Here was a woman whose life had been shaped by both tremendous joy and profound loss, and tonight represented the convergence of family pride, royal tradition, and personal triumph. Realized that this wasn't just about meeting royalty. It was about seeing her granddaughter achieve something that seemed impossible when Emma was growing up in poverty in Manchester. Meanwhile, William was engaged with a group of young people who had traveled from various parts of the UK to attend the performance. Among them was David, an aspiring musician from Scotland, whose own dreams of performing had been put on hold due to family financial difficulties. David had saved for months to afford the train ticket and seat, and meeting Prince William represented validation that his dreams weren't foolish or unrealistic. "Music has always been my escape," David explained when William asked about his background. "When my father lost his job and we nearly lost our house, I would sit in my room and write songs. They weren't very good at first, but they kept me from giving up." William listened with genuine interest, remembering his own struggles with finding purpose and direction as a young man. While his circumstances had been vastly different, the fundamental human need for meaning and creative expression was universal. "Are you still writing?" he asked. David's face lit up. "I am, Your Royal Highness. I'm actually studying music therapy now. I want to help other people the way music helped me." These conversations, brief as they were, reminded both and William why they were passionate about supporting the arts. It wasn't just about entertainment. It was about providing pathways for young people to transform their lives and, in turn, help others do the same. As they made their way toward the entrance, the royal couple was greeted by Sir Nicholas, the chairman of the Royal Variety Charity. Sir Nicholas had been involved with the charity for over a decade and had witnessed firsthand how the organization's work supported entertainment professionals during times of crisis. "Your Royal Highnesses," he said with a warm smile, "we're absolutely delighted to have you here tonight. This year's show is particularly special. We have performers representing every corner of the United Kingdom, and several have overcome tremendous personal challenges to be here." Was eager to learn more about the charity's recent work. "We've read about some of the performers' backgrounds," she said. "The resilience and determination are truly inspiring." Sir Nicholas nodded enthusiastically. "Just last month, we were able to help a veteran performer who had fallen on hard times due to illness. The charity covered his medical expenses and helped him get back on his feet. Tonight, he's working backstage, so grateful to be part of the community again. This was exactly the kind of impact that made events like the Royal Variety Performance meaningful beyond the entertainment value. The funds raised would directly support people who had dedicated their lives to bringing joy to others, ensuring that, when they faced difficulties, they wouldn't face them alone. Inside the atmosphere was electric with anticipation. The London Palladium had been transformed for the evening, with flowers arranged throughout the lobby and special lighting that gave the historic venue an extra touch of glamour. Staff members moved efficiently through final preparations, their pride in being part of this prestigious event evident in every carefully arranged detail. And William were escorted to the royal box, where they would have an excellent view of the stage while also being visible to the audience. The royal box itself had been updated for their comfort, with thoughtful touches that reflected their personal interests. Fresh flowers from the gardens at mineral water from a British company they had visited during a recent trade mission, and programs bound in leather with embossed gold lettering. As they settled into their seats, noticed a young girl in the orchestra section staring up at them with wide eyes. The child couldn't have been more than 8 years old, dressed in her finest dress and sitting between what appeared to be her parents. Smiled and waved, receiving an enthusiastic wave in return that made her laugh with genuine delight. "She reminds me of Charlotte," William observed, following his gaze. Their own daughter possessed that same wide-eyed wonder when experiencing something special, and seeing it reflected in this young audience member brought a warmth to the formal proceedings. They began to fill as the 7 o'clock hour approached. The audience represented a remarkable cross-section of British society, celebrities and ordinary families, elderly couples and young friends, people who had saved for months to attend, and others for whom this was just another evening out. But what united them all was an appreciation for live performance and the shared experience of witnessing something potentially magical. Backstage, the performers were going through their final preparations. Emma, the young singer from Manchester whose grandmother had met outside, was dealing with a case of pre-performance nerves that threatened to overwhelm her completely. This was by far the biggest stage she had ever faced, and knowing that the future king and queen consort were in the audience made it feel even more surreal. Emma's story was one of triumph over circumstances that could easily have led to very different outcomes. Raised by her grandmother after her parents died in a car accident when she was 12, Emma had discovered her singing voice during some of the darkest periods of grief, had encouraged her granddaughter's talent, even when it meant sacrificing other necessities to pay for voice lessons. The journey from those early lessons in a cramped Manchester flat to the stage of the London Palladium had been filled with rejections, disappointments, and moments when giving up seemed like the only reasonable option. But Emma had persisted, driven by a combination of natural talent, relentless determination, and the unwavering support of her grandmother. Now, standing in the wings and looking out at the audience that included actual royalty, Emma felt the weight of representing not just herself, but everyone who had believed in her along the way. Her grandmother's face in the crowd earlier had provided a moment of grounding, reminding her that regardless of the outcome, she had already achieved something extraordinary simply by being here. The other performers were experiencing their own pre-show rituals and emotions. James, the comedian who had written about his struggles with depression, was using humor as his own coping mechanism, keeping the backstage crew entertained with impromptu jokes and impressions. But underneath the laughter, he was deeply aware of how significant this moment was for his career and his personal journey. The dance troupe from East London was huddled together, their usual pre-performance energy heightened by the prestigious venue and distinguished audience. These teenagers had grown up in circumstances where opportunities like this seemed impossible, but their dedication to their craft and the guidance of their choreographer had opened doors that their younger selves could never have imagined. As 8 o'clock approached, the lights began to dim, signaling the start of the performance, and William exchanged a glance that combined excitement, anticipation, and the shared recognition that they were about to witness something special. The conversations from earlier in the evening, with David, with all the people who had shared their stories, had personalized the event in a way that made it much more than a royal duty. The curtain was about to rise on an evening that would showcase the very best of British talent, but it would also reveal the human stories behind the performances. For William, it would be a reminder of why supporting the arts mattered so deeply. For the performers, it would be the culmination of years of hard work and dreams. And for the audience, it would be a celebration of the power of live performance to bring people together, transcend differences, and create moments of shared wonder. The anticipation in the air was palpable as the final preparations concluded, and the magic of live prepared to unfold before an audience that included both royalty and ordinary citizens, all united in their hope for an extraordinary evening. The lights dimmed to complete darkness, and in that moment of absolute silence before the show began, felt her heartbeat quicken with genuine anticipation. The hush that fell over the audience was almost sacred, hundreds of people holding their breath, waiting for magic to begin. When the spotlight finally pierced the darkness and illuminated center stage, the evening officially transformed from anticipation into reality. The opening act was a classical string quartet, their performance both elegant and emotionally stirring. But what captured attention wasn't just the technical brilliance of their music, it was the story she had learned about their formation. The quartet had come together at a community center where each member had been struggling with different personal challenges. Music had become their common language, and eventually their salvation. William noticed how intently was watching, her hands clasped together in genuine engagement. He knew that expression. It was the same look she wore when visiting hospitals or meeting with young people through their charitable work. For this wasn't entertainment in the traditional sense. It was witnessing human resilience and talent overcoming adversity. The quartet's performance concluded to thunderous applause and found herself clapping with unusual enthusiasm. In the royal box, such displays of emotion were typically more measured, but tonight felt different. Tonight felt like a celebration of possibility rather than a formal obligation. As the next act prepared to take the stage, thoughts drifted to her own children and how they would react to seeing such talent on display. George had recently started showing interest in music, and she wondered if watching tonight's performances might inspire him to pursue his own creative interests more seriously. Charlotte had always been drawn to dance and movement, and the upcoming dance numbers might provide exactly the kind of inspiration a young girl needed to believe in her own potential. Emma, the young singer from Manchester, was scheduled to perform in the second half, but her presence was already felt during the brief interval between acts, had spotted in the audience, her face glowing with pride and anticipation. The connection between grandmother and granddaughter seemed to transcend the physical distance between them, creating an invisible thread of love and support that touched everyone who witnessed it. The next performer was James, the comedian whose letter about depression and recovery had moved so deeply. As he walked onto the stage, his confidence was immediately apparent, but could see something else beneath the polished exterior, a vulnerability that made his humor more profound and authentic. James began his routine with observations about everyday life that had the audience laughing within seconds. But as his performance progressed, realized that his comedy wasn't just about getting laughs. It was about finding light in darkness, about transforming pain into something that could bring joy to others. His jokes about therapy, about struggling with mental health, about the absurdity of asking for help were both funny and deeply moving. William found himself genuinely impressed by James's ability to address serious topics while keeping the audience engaged and entertained. This was exactly the kind of approach that he tried to bring to their own work, addressing difficult subjects in ways that were accessible and hopeful rather than heavy or depressing. One particular moment in James's routine stood out to both of them. He talked about a night when he had been considering giving up comedy entirely, feeling like he had nothing worthwhile to offer anyone. But then he received a letter from a young fan who said that watching one of his performances had helped her through a difficult time at school. "That's when I realized," James said to the audience, "we're not just telling jokes, we're telling people that it's okay to laugh even when things are hard. Sometimes that's the most important message of all." The applause that followed wasn't just appreciation for his humor. It was recognition of a deeper truth about the power of entertainment to heal and connect. Felt tears welling up in her eyes, moved by the reminder that art wasn't just about technique or talent. It was about human connection and the courage to share one's authentic self with others. During the brief intermission that followed James's performance, and William were escorted to a private reception area where they would meet with key figures from the Royal Variety Charity and some of the evening's performers. This was one of his favorite parts of such events, the opportunity to have more personal conversations with the people whose stories had moved her. James was among the first to be introduced and immediately expressed how much his performance had meant to her. "Your honesty about mental health struggles is so important," she told him. "Young people need to see that successful, talented individuals also face these challenges." James seemed genuinely surprised by the depth of her response. "Your Royal Highness, when I wrote to you earlier this year, I never imagined you'd actually read it, let alone remember the details." "Your letter was incredibly moving," replied. "It reminded me why supporting mental health initiatives is so crucial. You're showing people that seeking help isn't weakness, it's strength." This conversation what loved most about her role. Behind the formal titles and protocols, these were real people having meaningful exchanges about issues that mattered deeply. James left their conversation with a renewed sense of purpose, feeling that his vulnerability had been not just accepted, but valued. Meanwhile, William was speaking with Sir Nicholas about the charity's plans for expanding support to younger performers. "We're seeing more and more talented young people who need not just financial support, but mentorship and guidance," Sir Nicholas explained. "The entertainment industry can be particularly challenging for those without family connections or financial backing." This struck a chord with William, who had seen firsthand how his own privileged background had provided opportunities that others might never receive. "What kind of mentorship programs are you considering?" he asked, his mind already working through ways the Royal Foundation might be able to contribute. As they discussed potential initiatives, both men were energized by the possibility of creating pathways for talented young people to develop their skills, while also receiving the emotional and practical support they needed to navigate the entertainment industry. Back in the main, the audience was settling in for the second half of the performance. The energy had shifted subtly. The initial excitement remained, but it was now combined with the satisfaction of having already witnessed something special and the anticipation of what was still to come. Emma was preparing for her performance, the moment that would represent the culmination of years of hard work and dreams. In her dressing room, she was going through her final vocal warm-ups, but her mind kept drifting to her grandmother sitting in the audience. Had sacrificed so much to support Emma's musical education, working extra shifts and skipping her own small luxuries to pay for voice lessons and travel to auditions. The song Emma had chosen to perform was one she had written herself, inspired by her grandmother's strength and resilience. It told the story of a young woman learning to find her voice after loss, guided by the love and wisdom of an older woman who had faced her own share of hardships. Emma had never performed it publicly before, but tonight felt like the right moment to share something so personal. As she prepared to take the stage, Emma thought about all the young people back in Manchester who were watching tonight's performance on television. She hoped that seeing someone from their own community on such a prestigious stage might inspire them to pursue their own dreams, regardless of their circumstances. And William had returned to the royal box, and as the lights dimmed for the second half, both felt a heightened sense of anticipation. They had learned so much about the performers' backgrounds that each upcoming act felt personal rather than simply entertaining. The dance troupe from East London took the stage first, their energy and precision immediately commanding attention. But what struck most powerfully was the joy evident in their movement. These young people weren't just executing choreography, they were celebrating their own transformation through dance, and that celebration was infectious. The routine told a story of urban life, complete with challenges and triumphs, set to a mix of contemporary music that spoke to their generation's experiences. Found herself moved by the way they had translated their lived experiences into art, creating something beautiful from circumstances that could have led to very different outcomes. William was equally impressed by their technical skill and artistic vision. These weren't just talented dancers. They were young artists who had found their voices through movement and were using that voice to tell stories that mattered. As their performance concluded to enthusiastic applause, felt a deep sense of gratitude for being able to witness such talent and resilience. Each act was revealing new layers of human potential and creativity, reminding her why supporting the arts was about much more than entertainment. It was about recognizing and nurturing the best of human expression. The evening was building toward Emma's performance, the moment that would bring together all the threads of family, talent, perseverance, and hope that had been woven throughout the night. In the audience was holding her breath, her hands clasped tightly together as she prepared to watch her granddaughter take the stage before royalty and the watching nation. For in William, Emma's upcoming performance represented everything they hoped to support through their charitable work. Young talent overcoming adversity, family bonds transcending difficult circumstances, and the power of the arts to transform lives and inspire others. The spotlight found Emma as she stepped onto the stage, and in that brilliant circle of light, she appeared both incredibly young and remarkably composed. Felt her breath catch as she watched this 22-year-old woman from Manchester take her place at center stage, knowing the journey that had brought her to this moment. In the audience, was crying freely, her hands pressed to her heart as she watched her granddaughter fulfill a dream that had seemed impossible just a few years earlier. Emma stood quietly for a moment, allowing the silence to settle around her. She had learned from her voice coach that the pause before beginning was almost as important as the song itself. It gave both performer and audience time to connect, to prepare for the emotional journey they were about to share. Noticed this moment of stillness and recognized it as the mark of a true professional, someone who understood that performance was about more than just technical skill. When Emma began to sing, her voice filled though with a clarity and power that seemed impossible for someone so young. But it wasn't just the technical excellence that moved the audience. It was the emotion behind every note, the lived experience that informed every phrase. She was singing about loss and resilience, about the love that sustains us through difficult times, and about finding hope in unexpected places. The song was called Grandmother's Hands, and as Emma performed it, found herself thinking about her own grandmother, Queen Elizabeth II, and the wisdom and strength that had been passed down through generations of women in her family. The universal nature of Emma's message, about the way love transcends generations and helps us become who we're meant to be, touched something profound in every person listening. William was equally moved, but found himself focusing on the technical aspects of Emma's performance. Her breath control was exceptional, her pitch perfect, and her ability to convey emotion while maintaining technical excellence spoke to years of dedicated training and natural talent. This wasn't just a gifted amateur. This was a professional artist who happened to be very young. In the royal box, leaned forward slightly, completely absorbed in Emma's performance. She was thinking about the letter she had received from months earlier, describing Emma's journey from a grieving 12-year-old who had lost both parents to a young woman who was using her voice to heal not just herself, but others who heard her music. The middle section of the song built to an emotional crescendo that had the entire audience holding their breath. Emma's voice soared over the orchestral accompaniment, reaching notes that seemed to come from somewhere beyond technique, from the soul of someone who had truly experienced both loss and redemption. Felt tears on her cheeks and didn't try to wipe them away. This was one of those rare moments when art transcended entertainment and became something sacred. As Emma's performance concluded, the silence that followed lasted for several heartbeats, the kind of silence that occurs when an audience has been genuinely moved and needs a moment to process what they've experienced. Then the applause erupted, not just enthusiastic but emotional, with many audience members rising to their feet in genuine appreciation. And William both stood immediately, their applause heartfelt and prolonged. In the audience was sobbing with pride and joy, surrounded by strangers who had become temporary family members through their shared emotional experience. The woman sitting next to a complete stranger until tonight was hugging her and crying too, moved both by Emma's performance and by witnessing such pure familial love. As Emma took her bow, she looked directly up at the royal box and gracefully. But what would remember most wasn't the formal acknowledgement. It was the smile on Emma's face, an expression of pure joy and accomplishment that spoke to dreams realized and potential fulfilled. The performance that followed Emma's was a comedy act, but the performer, a seasoned professional named Robert Hayes, had the wisdom to acknowledge what the audience had just experienced. "Well," he said as he took the stage, "I'm supposed to make you laugh now, but honestly, I'm still getting over those chills from that beautiful song. Give me a minute to stop crying and I'll tell you some jokes." This moment of genuine acknowledgement actually enhanced his own performance, as the audience appreciated his honesty and felt connected to him as someone who had been equally moved by Emma's artistry. Robert's comedy routine was polished and entertaining, but it also served as a perfect emotional bridge, allowing the audience to laugh and relax after being so profoundly touched. Appreciated this aspect of variety shows. the way different types of performances could work together to create an emotional journey for the audience. After Emma's deeply moving song, Robert's humor provided necessary relief while also honoring what had come before. During the brief break between acts, turned to William with tears still visible in her eyes. "That was extraordinary," she said quietly. "I've never heard anything quite like that." William nodded, equally moved. The way she connected with every person in this, that's rare at any age, but especially for someone so young. She has something truly special. They were both thinking about the broader implications of what they had witnessed. Emma represented thousands of young people across the United Kingdom who had incredible talent, but needed support, mentorship, and opportunities to develop their gifts. Tonight's performance would undoubtedly open doors for Emma, but how many other Emma were out there, waiting for their chance? The conversation was interrupted by their private secretary, who informed them that Emma would be among the performers they would meet privately after the show. Felt a flutter of excitement at the prospect of speaking with Emma directly, of being able to express how moved she had been by both the performance and the story behind it. As the show continued, each subsequent act seemed to build on the emotional foundation that Emma had established. A magician from Wales performed illusions that delighted the audience while also telling a story about transformation and possibility. A spoken-word artist from Scotland delivered a piece about identity and belonging that had the audience hanging on every word. But it was the final act of the evening that brought all the themes of the night together in an unexpected way. The entire cast of performers returned to the stage, joined by a children's choir from a local London school. Together, they performed a medley of songs that celebrated British musical heritage while also pointing toward the future. Emma stood at the center of this group, her voice blending with but also rising above the others in moments of solo brilliance. Watching her interact with the other performers, could see that Emma possessed not just individual talent, but the ability to elevate those around her, a quality that marked true artistry. The children's choir was composed of students from various backgrounds, many of whom had never performed in such a prestigious venue. Their faces glowed with excitement and pride as they sang alongside professional performers, and found herself thinking about her own children and how experiences like this could shape a young person's sense of what was possible. Still emotional from her granddaughter's solo performance, was now watching Emma share the stage with dozens of other talented individuals. The grandmother understood that this moment represented not just Emma's individual achievement, but her granddaughter's entry into a community of artists who would support and challenge each other throughout their careers. As the final notes of the medley faded and the curtain began to fall, the audience rose as one in a standing ovation that lasted several minutes. And William remained standing throughout, their applause genuine and enthusiastic. They had witnessed something special, not just talented performances, but a celebration of human creativity and resilience that reminded them why supporting the arts was so fundamentally important. The evening's formal program was concluding, but knew that the most meaningful part was yet to come. Soon, she would have the opportunity to meet Emma face to face, to express her admiration directly, and to learn more about the young woman whose voice had moved her so deeply. As the curtain calls concluded and the audience began to file out, felt a deep sense of satisfaction and inspiration. Tonight had reinforced her belief in the power of the arts to transform lives, connect communities, and remind people of their shared humanity. Each performer had brought their own story to the stage, and collectively they had created something larger than the sum of their individual talents. The private reception that would follow would provide an opportunity for more intimate conversations, but already knew that tonight would be remembered as one of the most meaningful royal engagements she had ever attended. The combination of exceptional talent, moving personal stories, and genuine human connection had created an evening that transcended entertainment and became something approaching magic. The private reception following the performance was held in this elegant crimson room, where crystal chandeliers cast warm light over gathered performers, charity officials, and special guests. Entered the room with William, both still carrying the emotional resonance of what they had witnessed on stage. The formal program was complete, but the most personally meaningful moments of the evening were about to begin. Emma stood near the far window, still glowing from her performance but now appearing younger and more vulnerable in the intimate setting. She was speaking quietly with her voice coach, Mrs. Williams, who had traveled from Manchester specifically to see Emma's breakthrough moment. could see the deep affection between teacher and student, the kind of mentoring relationship that transforms not just talent but lives. As approached Emma, she noticed the young woman's hands were still trembling slightly, not from nerves, but from the adrenaline that follows a truly transcendent performance. Emma has reached her, but the Princess of Wales immediately gestured for her to relax, creating an atmosphere of genuine conversation rather than formal protocol. Emma began, her voice warm with authentic emotion. Your performance tonight was absolutely extraordinary. I don't think there was a dry eye in the including mine. Emma's face lit up with a mixture of pride and disbelief. Your Royal Highness, thank you so much. When I was growing up in Manchester, I used to watch the Royal Variety performance on television with my grandmother and dream about someday being on that stage. Tonight felt like living in a dream. Tell me about the song you performed, requested, genuinely eager to learn more about the creative process behind such a moving piece. It felt so personal, so authentic. Emma's expression softened as she thought about her grandmother. I wrote it about my Nan, actually. She raised me after my parents died, and she sacrificed so much to help me pursue music. The song is about the way love passes between generations, how the strength we receive from our elders helps us become who we're meant to be. Felt a familiar tightness in her throat as she listened to Emma's explanation. The themes of family, sacrifice, and intergenerational love resonated deeply with her own experiences of motherhood and her relationship with the late Queen Elizabeth II. Your grandmother must be incredibly proud, she said. I had the privilege of meeting her outside the Tonight. She spoke so beautifully about your journey. She's my inspiration, Emma replied, her eyes brightening. Even when things were really difficult financially, she never let me give up on music. She worked extra shifts at the hospital where she's a cleaner just to pay for my voice lessons. Tonight is as much her victory as it is mine. This conversation encapsulated everything valued about her role as Princess of Wales. Behind the formal titles and ceremonial aspects, she was having a meaningful exchange with a young woman whose story embodied the best of human resilience and family love. Emma wasn't just a talented performer. She was a symbol of how individual dreams, when supported by loving family and dedicated teachers, could blossom into something that inspired entire communities. Meanwhile, William was engaged in conversation with James, the comedian whose openness about mental health struggles had made such an impact earlier in the evening. James was explaining how his comedy career had evolved to include more serious themes without losing its entertainment value. I've learned that people are hungry for honesty, James was saying. They want to laugh, but they also want to feel less alone in their struggles. Comedy can be a bridge that helps people talk about things they might otherwise keep hidden. William found this perspective fascinating, as it aligned with his and approach to their charitable work around mental health. You're providing a valuable service, he told James. Making difficult topics accessible through humor takes real skill and courage. It's also helped me process my own experiences, James admitted. Every time I perform material about therapy or depression, I'm reminding myself that seeking help was the right choice. And when audience members come up to me afterward and say they've decided to talk to someone because of something I said on stage, I remember why this work matters. This exchange reinforced William's belief in the power of public figures to normalize conversations about mental health. James might not be a traditional advocate or counselor, but his willingness to be vulnerable on stage was reaching people who might never attend a formal mental health awareness event. Across the room was now speaking with Mrs. Sarah Wilson, the choreographer who had worked with the dance troupe from East London. Mrs. Wilson's eyes sparkled with passion as she described the transformation she had witnessed in her students. When these young people first came to my studio, many of them were dealing with anger, grief, or feeling like they had no future, she explained. Dance became a way for them to express emotions they didn't have words for, but more than that, it gave them discipline, confidence, and a sense of belonging. Was deeply moved by Mrs. Wilson's dedication. How did you know that dance could make such a difference in their lives? Because it saved mine first, Mrs. Wilson replied with characteristic honesty. I grew up in similar circumstances, poverty, family instability, feeling like I didn't matter. Dance gave me purpose and hope. I started teaching because I wanted to give other young people what dance had given me. This conversation reminded of the ripple effects of artistic education. Mrs. Wilson had been transformed by dance, and now she was transforming others, who would likely go on to influence even more lives. The impact of supporting the arts extended far beyond individual performers to create waves of positive change through communities. As the evening progressed, found herself in conversation with Emma's grandmother, who had been invited to the private reception. Was still emotional from watching her granddaughter's performance, but she was also eager to express her gratitude for the opportunities that had led to this moment. "Your Royal Highness," said, her voice still thick with emotion, "when Emma's parents died and I suddenly found myself raising a heartbroken 12-year-old, I honestly didn't know how we would manage. Music was the first thing that brought light back into her eyes." Listened intently as continued. "There were times when I wondered if I was being foolish, spending money we didn't have on voice lessons instead of more practical things. But watching her tonight, seeing how her gift has grown and how she's using it to touch other people's hearts, I know every sacrifice was worth it." "Your support made all the difference," responded warmly. "Emma's talent is extraordinary, but talent alone isn't enough. She needed someone who believed in her dreams and was willing to invest in them." Nodded, wiping away fresh tears. "She's already talking about starting a scholarship program for other young people from backgrounds like hers. She wants to give back, to help other children who have talent but not opportunity." This revelation filled with admiration for both Emma and, despite their own struggles, they were already thinking about how to help others facing similar challenges. This generous spirit the best outcomes of arts education, not just individual success, but a commitment to lifting up the next generation. As the reception began to wind down, and William found themselves reflecting on the evening's profound impact. They had witnessed extraordinary performances, but more importantly, they had connected with remarkable individuals whose stories embodied the transformative power of the arts. Sir Nicholas approached them for a final conversation about the evening's success. "Your Royal Highnesses, I can't thank you enough for your presence tonight. The performers were truly elevated by your genuine engagement with their work." "The pleasure was entirely ours," replied sincerely. "This has been one of the most meaningful events we've attended. The talent we've witnessed tonight and the stories behind that talent have been genuinely inspiring." William nodded in agreement. "Events like this remind us why supporting the arts is so crucial. We've seen tonight how creative expression can transform individuals, strengthen communities, and bring people together across all kinds of boundaries." As they prepared to leave took a final look around the Crimson Room, where conversations were still continuing between performers, families, and supporters. The energy remained vibrant and warm, with new connections being formed and existing relationships deepened through shared experience. Emma was saying goodbye to her voice coach, but noticed that they were also making plans for Emma's next steps. The Royal Variety performance wasn't an ending, it was a beginning, a launching pad for the next phase of Emma's artistic journey. Stood nearby, beaming with pride and anticipation for whatever would come next. As and William left and stepped back into the London evening, they carried with them the memory of voices that had moved them, stories that had touched their hearts, and a renewed commitment to supporting the arts as a force for positive change. The formal performance had ended hours ago, but the impact of the evening would continue to resonate in their work and their understanding of how creativity and human connection could transform lives. The car ride back to Kensington Palace was quiet, both of them processing the emotional depth of what they had experienced. But it was a comfortable silence, filled with the satisfaction that comes from witnessing something truly special and being able to play a meaningful role in celebrating and supporting exceptional talent. Tonight had reinforced their belief that the monarchy's role in supporting the arts wasn't just ceremonial, it was essential. By providing platforms for talented individuals like Emma, James, and all the other performers, they were helping to ensure that creativity and human expression continued to flourish, inspiring future generations to pursue their own artistic dreams while contributing to the rich cultural heritage of the United Kingdom.